Okay, so I want to welcome everybody. Thanks so much for being so flexible with the room arrangements. And I'm Dr. Stefan Kassian, first-year resident, adjunct faculty here at Bastyr. And we have a very special guest today, Debbie Pendergast. And we'll be presenting about HeartMath. What is HeartMath and what makes it so special? Well, so many patients come to the clinic and they're stressed out, don't even know that they're stressed out or why they're stressed. So we know how big of a killer stress can be. It's responsible for 80% of all our chronic health problems in this country. And beyond that, also, people come and say, well, I want to learn how to manage my stress, but how do I necessarily know that this works? I mean, I might breathe, but I don't know if that's helping me, breathe better. I don't know if that's helping me change my physiology. So this is an incredible tool that's scientifically based. It's been around for 2+ decades with solid research showing how we can work with our breath and change our heart rate variability to increase our ability to regulate our immune system and basically de-stress and create more physiological coherence. So basically by being heart-centered, living a heart-centered life, using these techniques, you can become a lot more of an integrated person, but even more than that, just manage your stress. And Debbie has done some amazing work with Mayo Clinic as a nurse with this technology, and we're also considering offering this in the winter. So I appreciate you showing up, and your interest helps us look at offering this as an elective to get additional training to offer patients. So without any further ado, let's say welcome, Deborah.
Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here because what I want to talk to you about changed my life. As a nurse, as a chief nursing executive responsible for over 1,800 people, I got involved with this because of my own stress levels and my inability to focus and have clarity and be as effective as I wanted to be. I also saw the impact that stress was taking on my own health, but also caregivers, physicians, nurses. Moral distress is a term you'll hear today. Moral distress, burnout, all of those different things. When we, as healers and caregivers, put ourselves out there and use ourselves, the therapeutic use of self, as a way of healing people, it takes its toll unless we learn the tools and techniques to maximize not only our health, but the health of those people that we care about. We're an energetic field. The heart is one of the most powerful energy fields we have, and we have control over it. And our heart energy, which is measured, is what changes the climates in rooms, et cetera. We've learned a lot. The science behind this is what convinced me. I was also a Robert Wood Johnson Scholar, 3-year executive program, where I got funding to be able to bring this project to Mayo Clinic, brought it to caregivers, taught over 300 while I was there, and then it went on. Physicians use it in their private practice for patients. I'm not here to sell HeartMath, but I'm here to tell you that the tools and techniques that have been scientifically validated for the past 20 years, I've been doing it for at least 15. You can take a bibliography here of some of their sites and public research. They're not out there to make a lot of money. They're out there to help us have a more coherent, peaceful, joyful life. And I'm one that's always been skeptical of salespeople, but not of this. So just a brief history. They were founded in 1991. They're a nonprofit organization, and they have studied the link between stress and our ability to self-regulate our emotional state. This system has been used most recently by police departments across the country, and we know the state of police departments today. It has taught police and the military, it's taught those participants how to stay cognizant, how to stay more centered, more balanced, and not move into a chaotic, extremely stressful place. And they're in stressful environments. And I'm here to tell you, no matter how chaotic the world seems around you, with these tools and techniques practiced over time, you can maintain clear, calm, efficient functioning. It's true. I've seen it, I know it, and these tools help you be perhaps the only rational person in a moment of great chaos. Much published research, on and on and on. They are international as well as national. They started out with Fortune 500 companies when CEOs recognized many years ago that their profits were going down because their room of executives were so stressed they weren't producing good results. We know that to produce good results, your brain has to be calm, clear, so that the signals get to the neocortex. Stress inhibits those clear thoughts from getting to our to the neocortex where our optimum processing and functioning occurs. So this program, usually given over a series of 6 to 8 one-hour classes, 2 to 3 weeks apart, sometimes reinforced 6 months later, helps us to learn the tools. It helps us to increase our personal resilience and our energy levels. How many of us would like to have more energy? Energy is a direct result of plugging our energy drains, and our energy drains are all stress related. So the workshop topics include how do we regulate, self-regulation, emotional intelligence. A lot of that is derived from the physiological studies that HeartMath has contributed to understand how emotional intelligence helps us or how emotional unintelligence inhibits us in maximizing our performance and our ability to be the best possible caregivers that we can be. So a term I really want you to focus on, and there are about 3 of them I really want you to keep in mind: resilience. The curriculum for HeartMath has changed over the years. The concepts are very, very similar, but the newest curriculum is called resilience. And this is the capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress. How do we jump back? I like to think about it as the Gumbies, and I don't know how many people remember Gumby. Anybody here? Ah, good. So, Gumby can twist and turn, but he's always upright. Or I like to think about when my son was a child, he had a little anger management problem, so I bought him one of those big, air-filled things where it kept bouncing back after you punched it. That's resilience. If that little punching bag stayed down, that would be a non-resilient, example of a toy. Resilience. What we learn through the HeartMath tools and technology and our way of thinking and performing is how to adapt more quickly. We can not be experiencing low-level anxiety, and we can be in a state of ease much more frequently, experience more joy, more peace through the use of these tools. Important in this is how do we learn to maintain a positive attitude, which changes our chemical soup. Really important here, resilience we talked about. This circle here, coherence, is what we're striving for. Coherence has a few terms. Coherence is really all systems in balance. There is a physiological definition of coherence. It's when everything is moving as it should. Everything is in sync. Nothing is out of whack. And so many times with low-level anxiety that we're all experiencing because our baseline has been reset over the last 100 years, we are in flight and fight mode as a norm, as a society. Unlike 100 years ago when our baseline was less, when we went into flight and fight mode when we'd see a bear coming, or 200 years ago, then our baseline would go back down. So coherence is when everything is flow. When we say go with the flow, it's a very helpful state that we can achieve more often. There are many domains of resilience: physical, mental, spiritual. The one that we can control through HeartMath technology, through practice, is emotional. This is where we learn self-regulation, and it is the one that we can control the most in our response to stress. So this is a really good diagram. It's an optimal state in which the heart, the mind, and the emotions are aligned and they're in sync. And it's a time, if you thought about those peak moments, it's a time when everything's great. Sometimes we get glimpses of peak moments when we think about our children, our pets. We get glimpses of that on vacation. But sometimes it's so elusive that we can't even remember how to activate a positive feeling or emotion. I was that way. I was so numb at periods of my life that I didn't experience depression, I didn't experience joy. I wasn't even sure what joy looked like. Often that is the case with people who are burnt out. And so when we talk about helping people to activate a positive feeling or remember a peak moment, they can't initially. They sometimes can't. So then you talk to them about a memory of a time when they may have felt something joyful. Peak moments. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I want to do a show and tell with equipment because that's what everybody likes. I must tell you that the lecture is so good, but the show and tell always wins. Peak moments, though, those are the times. And I got to tell you a story about why it was important to me. I've always been a high achiever. When I was in my 20s, I went to grad school, single mom of 2 kids, taking 18 credits and working 1 to 2 jobs. And I only slept 3 to 4 hours at night because I'd have my pot of coffee at midnight, and you know, I was living like that. Ended up in the ER with chest pain, and doctor wanted to know, do you have any stress in your life? Well, not really, you know. But I started meditation, yoga, on and off. And then later in life, you know, high achiever, all those things. I did end up in the ER a couple times, rule out chest pain, heart attack and stuff. But the thing that really changed me was when my kids were teens, and they said to me, you know, Mom, you don't listen. And it used to be a joke, because my mind would be moving on, and I'd be having multiple conversations, and they'd say something to me about something, and then I'd move into the other topic. And they'd say, you know, it used to be funny, but it's not anymore. We're not going to bother telling you anymore. You know, you just don't listen. Hurt me terribly, but I wasn't mindful. My mind was cycling so fast, and I just thought that was normal, but it hurt. And I learned how to stop, how to be present. Spent a week in meditation with, what's his name? One of the gurus. Meditation alone didn't do it for me. I'll think of his name. But this did it because it's just in time. I can walk and talk and get myself coherent. So when we're not having peak moments, which for most people is, sadly enough, 5 to 10% of their week, the rest of the time, it's stress. What is stress? Well, it's the wear and tear that's going on in our bodies. Everyday tensions and pressures, everyday hassles, and it's cumulative, cumulative, cumulative. One of the stories I like to tell is, what about the mom that gets up in the morning, the alarm didn't go off on time, so she's already late. She's got 2 kids to get ready, be out of the house by 7:20, and then the kids tell her at 7:10 they need a treat for school, and their backpacks aren't packed, and then she gets on the expressway and somebody pulls in front of her. Each one of those episodes causes chemical response, catecholamine release. Then what happens? She gets to work, and there's 2 or 3 people there, and what do we have? You think you had a bad morning? Oh my God, let me tell you about mine. We have collective martyrs. And by the end of that story, everybody's down. Everybody has, collective martyrs, and we're all depressed by the end of it. So each of those is an energy drain. Energy drains over time. One of the visuals we used to use was a bathtub with a drain in, but a drip, drip, drip. Eventually, the bathtub overflowed because those constant energy drains over time shorten our lives. So, over time, chronic stress, and that is what most of the population lives in, is chronic increase over time of stress hormones, increased low-level anxiety, hypervigilance, micromanagement, perceptual distortions, threats seen everywhere. Everyone is the enemy. You know, it's like irritability or you're out to get me. Shortened triggers, irritability, defensive aggression. We see it on the expressway. We see it. And then there's regret, self-degradation, because you cannot stay in a state of high negativity. You slip to a state of low-level depression and anxiety. The impact of stress, $2 trillion each year. US ranks number 37 in healthcare quality. Most costly healthcare expenditures are for stress-related disorders. 75 to 90% of all primary care visits are for stress-related conditions. There's such a large body of research showing stress reductions affect our quality and our quantity of life. It's almost always an emotional reaction. If you go back to that domain that we looked at, it's that emotional domain that causes energy drains. And we go home and we don't have anything left at the end of the day for our relationships, for our pets, although I do find that they don't demand a lot, much less than people. So again, the research is there, and I have a lot to cover, so I'm not going to, you all know this as doctors. It's related to almost all of our health problems. Obesity, there's a whole program here, and I have taught that program emotional eating. We all know about that. Heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke, depression, all of those are related to stress. Do you know that workplace stress is as bad as high cholesterol, smoking, all of that? But we have come to tolerate it. We have come to just accept it as the norm. Big link between stress, heart attacks, depression, cancer. And it's not the events. There isn't any way that we can control what goes on. I mean, some control, of course, but it's how do we respond? And when we used to do this curriculum, we would put up whiteboards over there and we'd say, okay, what causes you stress in your life? Oh, not enough money. Oh, my coworkers, colleagues, you know, all those different things. My classes. There's nothing that you can do. The only thing that we have true control over is how we respond to those events externally. We have 100% control over that. Stress, and this is a definite, we talked about resilience, and that's our ability to swing back after stress, adversity, and not stay laying down, but to have that resilience, to be more flexible with life, experience more positive emotions. But stress, for our definition in HeartMath, is it's our mental, emotional, and physiological reactions to things that happen to us. We have total control over that. I put this up here again because we, to be resilient, must have emotional flexibility. Positive outlook, very important, and not always easy for people to cultivate, but it can be. It's a learned attribute. And self-regulation. So what is a mental reaction? We call it MEP, M-E-P, mental, emotional, and physical. Mental reaction is all those thoughts in our mind. Are they allies, or are they there saying, she's kind of an idiot, are you getting up in front of all these doctors and talking to them? You're a nurse, you know what they think about nurses. Is that the kind of internal dialogue that runs through your mind? Or it's a gift to give people something that might be helpful to them? I spent years with endless negative self-talk, chatter. What kind of tapes go on in your mind if you stop and listen? Emotional reaction. So if I'm thinking all that, what kind of thoughts do I have if I'm thinking, oh, they don't like nurses or whatever? I start to feel heavy. I start to think, I don't have anything to tell them. They're much more experienced. I haven't had anatomy and physiology in ages, blah, 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 blah. What happens to my chemical suit? My chemical suit starts to make me feel heavy. It starts to make me feel not confident, blah, blah, blah. What are those emotions that are generated? How does that internal talk stop, and how does our chemistry change? We can change it. Then the other one is our physiological reaction, and I like to talk to people about how many of you start to, when you get nervous, get that jaw clenching, wake up in the middle of the night, don't sleep, sleeplessness and difficulty sleeping, tensed muscles, all those things. It's so important that we do body scans frequently. What's our physiological reaction to stress? Shoulders ache. We have knots in our neck. That used to be one for me. We have tension headaches. The chemical soup that we create in our bodies by our thoughts and emotions can be positive or negative, and it's fascinating. The heart has its own complex nervous system, the heart and brain. So very important. The heart sends far more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. That's pretty amazing. We all, used to think the brain was the king of our lives. Actually, I think it's the heart. Signals from the heart especially affect the brain centers involved in strategic thinking, reaction times, and self-regulation. So our emotions can be generated from our heart and change, and whether they get through to the neocortex or not is how we process them based on our response to stress. Heart rate variability is what the tools that HeartMath has done or has helped develop is one of the key indicators about whether we are coherent or not when we use it over time. We all have an average pulse rate, 70, 78, but heart rate variability between that is able to be measured, and that heart rate variability changes over our lifetime, and it changes with practice. So heart rate patterns emerge over time, over seconds, and we have the most heart rate variability, flexibility when we're young, and it steadily declines as we age. But we can increase heart rate variability even as we're quite old by using the tools and techniques. It's a very important indicator of the psychological resiliency that we have in our ability to handle stress. And higher levels of heart rate variability are associated with superior mental performance on tasks requiring executive functions. You'll also find that this tool and these training tools are used for athletes. It's what we call being in the zone. Coaches, I've used it on young adolescents who are highly competitive because there's a whole feature of gaming, and they can get themselves into the zone much quicker than other people. It's very, very fascinating. So research shows that increased heart rate variability. This is students who are practicing HeartMath techniques, and you'll see this is considered to be a much more coherent, less jagged heart rate variability pattern. It's coherence, and I've seen this time and time again through the research of how their heart rate variability and their responses to stress have greatly improved. This is just another one. I want to show you a quick movie here, and I will just hope very much that this goes as it should. Let's see. this one, this one. My hero. Nope, it's not playing. Maybe this one. Listen to the screech. Well, this is my screen. Okay. It's a very good video that shows how we perceive things so much differently, time and space, when we have that screechy, awful music. When you have the calm music, even though the scene is exactly the same, your perception of calmness, time is very, very different. So we play those emotional soundtracks in our mind. And so what I want to do is, let's see, we're here. Okay, I'm going to do a demo now, real quickly. And I would like a volunteer. Yay! Come on up. This is called an M-Wave, and what this does is it has an ear sensor, and I'd like you to sit right here and look at me. That way we'll capture. And what you're going to see on the computer, this little device, very, very smart device, does. Ear sensor, you can use a thumb probe, and it captures over time. It has multiple levels, our heart rate variability and our coherence levels, so we can monitor it over time. What I have here is the computer version, and that has all kinds of games, and it is fun. It's a lot of fun. My grandkids, as well as my husband, they love it. It plays games like floating hot air balloons, etc. And as you practice over time, you become quicker at achieving a coherent state. That's kind of the beauty of this. And this is a brief demonstration. What is one of the things, if you wouldn't mind sharing with me, that causes you the most stress?
Oh, me?
Yes, you. Since you're so
Finances.
nice to volunteer. What?
Finances.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Not enough or too much?
Definitely too much.
Too much money?
No.
Just the opposite.
Yeah.
That's, well, I was hoping you were unusual. You had too much. Because I haven't met many of you.
I can tell you. Yeah.
Yes. What are kind of those things that cause us stress? A lot of people will talk about, as a student, the stress of taking exams, things like that cause trouble. I was in the lobby today, and there were students, or potential students. I'm going to put this on your ear. Shouldn't hurt at all. There are potential students here who were here for interviews who were very stressed, and I actually did a quick coherence technique on them to help calm them down. Okay, this is one of the computer programs, and the first thing it's doing is I don't know how to get this to do its thing. So why don't you all come up here? Except I don't want you to look. You just turn a little bit this way, okay? Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so we talked, it's right now calibrating. And that's what it's doing. And we talked about test scores, we talked about finances and not having enough money. Now, if you don't mind my touching,
That's okay.
I'm going to take you through a quick coherence technique. I would like you to breathe in and out with intention, about 5 seconds inhale, about 5 seconds exhaling. I'd like you to focus on the area around your heart and activate a feeling or a memory of something that brought you peace, calm, joy, a vacation, a pet, a family, a patient that you helped. Just continue to breathe in through the area around your heart. Most people without this training stay in the red zone. Most people. That's pretty profound. This is a physiological response and an autonomic response to activate chemicals fuel the positive emotions in breathing, which helps regulate the autonomic nervous system over time. And these tools help track progress over time. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. How do you feel?
The same, I guess.
Well, you just did a very nice job. You were in between the middle and the green part. Most people spend all of their time in the red.
Oh.
But when you start to breathe with intention and do, this was just one technique called quick coherence, you ended up changing your autonomic and chemical system.
Whoa.
So thank you so very much. It's a good thing I've had the training or I'd be a wreck. I used to have a horrible, horrible fear of public speaking. And one time when I was first selected as the first chief nurse for the Mayo Clinic Hospital in Arizona, I had an audience of 300. And I was beside myself. It was one of the most fearful times in my life. And public speaking was right up there with thinking you're going to be attacked by terrorists. It's that high of a fear among people. So as I'm starting to speak, my boss walks in, and I was fine after the first 2 minutes until he walked in, and then I just emotionally